You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Our conversation this morning borders on release of Kuriga school children, and to set the tone for the discussion, here's a backgrounder by Joseph Osen.
The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child stipulates protection from kidnapping, violence, and right to education among other children's rights. But for many parents and children in the northern parts of Nigeria, attaining this fundamental right is becoming a nightmare due to terrorist or bandits' attacks on schools and adoption of school children for huge ransom. Since the kidnapping of the Chibok school girls back in 2014, it seems terror groups are now adopting this technique as soft means to achieve their self-targets. Just like other incidents that followed the Chibok mayhem, the month of March 2024 will go down as another that witnessed a major challenge to child rights to education in the country. On March 7th, it was reported that at least 287 pupils were kidnapped when terrorists stormed a primary and secondary school in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State. Then, 2 days later, 17 pupils were adopted from a Sangaya school in Gada local government area of Sokoto State, a facility for the teaching of Islamic knowledge. The latest adoptions drew condemnation and outrage from President Bola Tinubu, who directed security agencies to swing into action and ensure that the children are rescued speedily and unharmed. Indeed, the Nigerian military have lived up to its responsibility, rescuing the 17 children from Sokoto and presenting them and a lady to the state governor. In early hours of Sunday, another milestone was reached by the military as it announced the rescue of 137 pupils, contrary to reports of 287 kidnapped in Kaduna schools. The military attributed these successes to joint effort of security formations and local authorities. Reacting to the development, President Bola Tinubu, in a statement, commended the collaboration between the security agencies and the state governments in handling the situation, noting that urgency, meticulous attention, and tireless dedications are critical to optimal outcomes in cases of mass adoptions. He assured Nigerians that his administration is deploying detailed strategies to ensure that schools remain safe sanctuaries of learning and not liars for wanton adoptions. In August 2023, the federal government's Safe School initiative was flagged off, but recently UNICEF expresses concern that out of 6,000 schools implementing the program, only 40% are meeting maximum standards, a number the present administration will be looking at as it seeks safe education for Nigerian children. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be analyzing the efforts that led to the release of the school children.
Many thanks, Joseph, for that background report. We apologize for the slight audio challenge as that report went on. Now, joining us to discuss the release of Kuriga school children, I would like to welcome in the studio Dr. Hamid Aboduri, the Commander, National Safe School Response Coordination Center, Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC Headquarters, Abuja. Many thanks for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. We also have with us a regular, also a doctor, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, the security risk management expert. So glad you could join us for the conversation.
The pleasure is mine. Good morning.
All right. Joining us via Zoom, we have the Honorable Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Maman, SAN. Prof, good morning to you, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning.
Professor Tahir Maman, SAN, is Honorable Minister of Education. And we also have two guests joining us from our Kaduna studio. First, let me introduce Muhammad Ali, security expert. Thank you so much for joining us. He's also a regular, and good morning.
For having me, Jumai.
Kaduna studio is Umar Anjiki. He's our correspondent from Kaduna, and he has been on this beat for quite a while and giving us, feedback since the students in Kuriga were abducted. Let's begin with you, Umar. Can you please tell us the situation of things right now in Kaduna? We heard that 137 students have regained freedom, and the rest are still with their abductors. What is really going on? What kind of feelers are you getting from the DHQ and other security agencies in Kaduna?
Good morning, Jumai. The early hours of yesterday, the state governor broke the cheering news on his social media handles that these students of Kuriga that were abducted on the 7th of March were released by their abductors. The news that generated reactions from Nigerians, commending the security agencies as well as the president for that giant feat in successfully securing the release of these abducted students. We were at the government house yesterday since around 8 a.m. in the morning, waiting for the arrival of the released students, because we were meant to understand that they were released in Zamfara State, and the military are on their way to hand them over to Kaduna State government for onward reuniting them with their parents, with their families. Later in the evening, we got an information that the state government has decided to take them to a nearby medical facility for them to undergo a thorough medical checkup because of their condition and the trauma and because of their experiences. Earlier, the parents, the journalists, and also other stakeholders were all at the government house waiting for their arrival, but the parents were told to go back home and come back hopefully today to receive their children. The state governor earlier, while waiting, had deployed the police special squad that the Inspector General of Police promised to deploy to Kuriga when he came to Kaduna to commiserate with the Kaduna state government on this unfortunate incident. They were deployed yesterday to that village for confidence building in the community and to remain there for a while to ensure that such incidents do not happen again in the future. As well, later in the evening, the governor said the exact number of these students that were abducted are 137, not 287, that was exaggerated according to him by the media then when the incident happened. The stakeholders were commending NTA because since the incident happened and up to this moment, NTA is one of the media organizations in this country that was not caught up in this whole issue of exaggerating or this number speculation. We're professional in that regard. We are not found wanting up to this moment. We didn't say this is the exact number. And then one of the victims, who is the teacher of that school, unfortunately the governor said he could not made it, that he developed some complications while in captivity, and unfortunately he died. That is the situation so far. We'll go back later, hopefully maybe the children will be reunited with their families, who I'm very sure are very anxious at the moment to receive them.
Get back to the minister, for him to respond to some questions. I would pause you at that point. Of course, we have more questions for you because you've been following this development since it broke, some weeks ago. But let me just quickly hit Professor Tahir Maman now, SAN, Honorable Minister of Education. You heard our correspondent, just give us, just a bit on, the whole issue. First question I'd like to ask you, were these children released or they were rescued? We need to get the perspective right. And then there's this new figure, as mentioned by Umar Ajingi, talking about the fact that 137 students were abducted, which means that all of them have been released, or if you like, rescued at the moment. That figure was not counted as at the time these students were kidnapped. Why the change in figure now? Please, could you just speak to this?
Well, thank you very much for having me once more. I want to start by thanking our president for his determined and unequivocal leadership on this matter and other matters in the governance of the country. And then all those who played a role in the rescue of these young ones. I remember at the last Federal Executive Council when the matter came up, he was very categorical. He gave very clear instructions to the security to bring back our children. Today, we have the children back, and we in the education sector are extremely elated about this development. And we commend the efforts of the national security under the leadership of the National Security Advisor, who since then, has been in the trenches to ensure that these students are back to us and back to their families and back to the country to pursue their life's aspiration to be educated citizens and be empowered like any other enlightened Nigerian citizen. Now, coming back to the number is clearly 137, and with one teacher who unfortunately lost his life. May his gentle soul rest in peace. May Aljana Firdaus be his final abode. And so there's no really controversy about the number now, because yesterday when I went to appreciate the NSA on the matter, he was very clear that the number of students is actually 137 and no more, and all of them are back. So no student has been left behind. So that's the number that we are dealing with. And as I said, we are extremely elated since this incidents happened. We in the entire education sector have been praying and praying and praying, especially given that this is a period of spiritual period for the whole country, Ramadan, and then the Lent, which just passed. And so we are very happy and elated about this current development.
Just you didn't respond to my first part of the question, talking about if the students were actually released by their abductors or if they were rescued by security operatives. What's the situation? Because we know that the abductors asked for a ransom to be paid before they are released. So what's the true picture of what happened yesterday?
I'm not sure I want to go into the semantics of whether it's a release or a rescue. Either way, we have these children back. And it is essentially on account of the efforts of the security agencies who played the role that they played. And the president was very clear that no ransom must be paid. And there's no information whatsoever that any ransom was paid for you to say, okay, on account of that, it was negotiated, there was some payment, and because of it, they were released. So certainly, I would say they were rescued, because release means some kind of voluntary, happy type of thing, whereas rescue, and of course, the show of force and determination on the part of the security agencies. But either way, as I said, we have the children back within actually a very short time. Because you remember what has happened to many other cases in the past where they spent months and months in custody. Now these students were away for about 2 weeks now, and 2 weeks is too long, but two weeks was short compared to the experiences we've had in the past. So we really must appreciate our security agencies for a job well done.
I'm going to stay with you still. When this happened, the Nigerians said, this is one too many. The hearts of Nigerians skips. The question is, are my children going to be next? And we've had so many abductions over the time. And but the question is, why is it that schools are the target now by these kidnappers? And even with the Safe School Initiative on ground, what is the Safe School Initiative actually doing to prevent this kind of abduction from school in large numbers, the way it's going now?
Well, the Safe Schools Initiative, as you know, it's a relatively recent development in view of the attack, the unfortunate attack on schools in Nigeria and in some parts of the world. And it is still trying to settle down, just set up a secretariat. It has been able to put in place some structures here and there, but it is not yet fully in place. And not all the stakeholders have signed up in terms of executing what they're supposed to do, especially at the state level, and then also for the security agencies to establish their full presence across the country, and especially in vulnerable institutions. So we still have a long way to go to ensure, but we don't have the time, we don't have the luxury of the time, because certainly we cannot have attacks on schools, very soft target, very young people, vulnerable people, happening. So we are ramping up efforts with the security agencies, all those involved. The entire security agencies are now sensitized. They are putting in place strategies. And for this, the community is also being mobilized. There's a training that will be coming out that will be done very soon in respect of communities where the schools are located. The schools will also be, management and students in those schools that are in sensitive places will also be sensitized about what they can do to prevent any attack and to pass information to the relevant security agency when there's some ominous evidence of some attack on schools. So the entire, and then there are some other fiscal measures that have to be taken in order to ensure that these schools remain safe and for learning and education of our children as the president has directed. So we are ramping up efforts to ensure the safety of schools.
Let me ask, why is it taking so long for all stakeholders to come on board on the Safe School Initiative? Because it has been, it was declared in 2016 and it's almost going to a decade of the declaration of the Safe School Initiative. Why is it taking so long for everybody to come on board to ensure that this Safe School Initiative takes off from the drawing board to reality? And, everything we do, implementation is key.
Great. I mean, it shouldn't have taken us this long, but as you know, this government is just about 7-8 months in place now. And what has happened in the last 3-4 months, I tell you, it's been a lot have been done, a lot of meetings, structures have been put in place. And even now, the security agencies have upped their attention seriously to this matter. In view of what has happened of recent. And so there's a complete change in tide and approach to addressing issues of safety in schools. And I believe very, very soon you will see most of the schools, if not all, particularly those in the vulnerable areas, enjoys the level of security that the country wants them to enjoy, because it's extremely heartbreaking, heart-wrenching to see young people picked away from their places. And, we are all doing everything possible to get all our children back to school. Ensure every student enjoys the compulsory education provision, which every student is a child of Nigeria is entitled to. But with insecurity, that could affect enrollment. And this is this must be prevented, must be stopped. And one other measure which we are now doing, coming back to the number again, about whether it's initially whether 132, it's nobody was certain about it. The ministry is about to launch a major breakthrough program in generating data on our schools, on our teachers, and on our schools in the country. All schools are going to be registered, all students are going to be registered, so that hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to account for every student in every primary school, secondary school, and university in Nigeria. And so that whenever, we hope it doesn't happen, but for whatever reason, for planning, for us to know trains, patterns of education for us to, for government to be, or any other stakeholder to be able to intervene. We have the data on all the schools in Nigeria, like what has happened. If it comes after what we are done with what we plan to do, the principal will simply be able to check his register and the record, the data they have in the school, and tell clearly that, okay, we have just 137 students taken. So this government is doing a lot to provide, to set the baseline, for schools, and in addition to providing sufficient cover for the safety and the security of the students while in school.
Many thanks, Professor Tahir Baman. From what you're saying that the LEA school in Kuriga does not have a register of the number of students that they have, because if they do, we should be able to get the exact figure, and they should have refuted the figure that was released as at the time the kidnap was done. Anyways, we hope that we get a clearer picture as regards the number, as we move on. But let's talk about, you talked about the security and you talked about Safe School Initiative. There's also the National Policy on Safety, Security and Violence-Free Schools that was signed in 2021. Could you speak to us about that? And then could you also reassure Nigerians, because besides these, the students in Kaduna State, there are other students that are still in captivity that have not been released many years down the line. Is there hope that, the kind of measures that were put in place to ensure the safe release of these students will also be put in place to ensure that those that are still in captivity, some almost a decade, Chibok almost a decade, will be released, and of course we'll get to see them again?
Chibok more than a decade, actually.
Well, we keep on appealing to the security agencies to strengthen intelligence gathering, to and monitoring of what is happening around. A lot of these things depends on intelligence. And right now, that's what we need to invest on. And I remember the Minister of Communications and Technology gave assurance at the last Federal Executive Council of the ongoing investment to ensure that the entire country is covered, in terms of availability of internet, so that whenever such a thing happens, then the security will be able to use the communication facility to track down, such terrible human beings. And actually, even last week, when I was in Calabar to present the president on communication of that university, I was informed of a lecturer who disappeared about a year now. And we've made a report to the security agency, because I find it very strange, and some of the places in that university that are vulnerable. So we have this. We
can hear you. Go on, we can hear you.
Okay, so we still have a few cases here and there where students and even staff have been in abduction for some time, and this is completely outrage, is unacceptable, and we'll continue to encourage the security agencies to deploy intelligence to be able to find these missing people, because it's not good for the image of the country. It's not good for schools. These are very easy target. They are very large number together, and for people to simply move in and whisk people away and then keep them for such a long time, it's totally unacceptable. So with the new initiative and the new drive to strengthen the Safe School Initiative and the sensitization on the part of the security agencies and their use of technology, which we encourage them to strengthen, and the involvement of the Communications Ministry, again, to strengthen our communication facilities, I think we are moving into a stage where we can feel comfortable that a lot is coming up.
Minister, I know we have to let you go. You have an event to go to, but I'm going to ask you one last question before you go. What about the teaching, of students and teachers in those schools? The drills of maybe an alert if in case kidnappers are coming to kidnap them. What are you doing in synergy with the security agencies to ensure that these schools have the drilling mechanism to ensure that they are safe from kidnappers when it happens?
This is extremely important, and it's the key to preventive measures. And this is where the Safe School initiative is coming very strongly. First, as I said, to sensitize the community where all these schools are. There are lots of times there's information, prior information as to some of these things happening. A lot of them tend not to be true. To be a surprise, movement of strange people, movement of people, new faces around the areas and in the campuses, and all that. And then if they notice strange faces, who do they report to? And then the school management again. Apart from in addition to the community engagement, the school management, for them to keep an eye on the general environment of the school, and then who are coming, who are not coming, and then students as well, when they notice some strange movements around their area, what they should do. And then, of course, the physical facilities of the campus, fencing, and a lot of schools are not fenced in the country. And this is where the state governments need to play a major role. We want to implore on them to ensure that all schools, especially schools in rural areas and other vulnerable places, are fenced. And not just fenced, but also provide some kind of ditches around the schools. But ditches provide a better safety cover than even fences, because it's very difficult to cross over ditches with motorcycle vehicles and even on foot. So we want to encourage the state government to play their own role. And honestly, again, talking about the learning environment, if you look at the background and the school in Kuriga, you will not be happy with what we say there, because the facilities really don't speak well about the environment within which these students are learning. Very terrible, very bad structures. And I believe the government of Kaduna State will give some attention to these and many other schools that are in those conditions. And also, there are excellencies across the country. The rural schools need to be attractive to students, need to be close to the students, and for ease of movement from their houses to the school, because most of schools are no longer boarding. So we need to, especially in the wake of what is happening now, where the spirit of parents and the students will be dumping in enrollment. So we need to keep schools very attractive, and also for the teachers to be safe, to feel safe to go to school and teach as and when they should. So everybody have a very major role to play to ensure that our schools are suitable environment for students to go there, suitable and safe environment for students to go there and learn. From amongst the students, we have future governors, future presidents, future members of the responsible members of society, future scientists. So we have to give them everything that we need. And I tell you, anybody who attacks schools is like striking a knife at the heart of the nation and the future of the country, because that's our future.
All right, many thanks, Professor Tahir Mamman, SEN, Honorable Minister of Education. Thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria. We have to let you go because you have to attend to some urgent matters, and of course as regards education in the country. We look forward to seeing some of the things that you've said come to fruition, just so that we can have our children in schools and have those who are out of schools in school. Thank you once again, Professor Tahir Mamman.
Thank you for having me. God bless you. Thank you.
All right, so we're back in the studio. I'd like to begin with Dr. Hamida Boduri, the Commander, National Safe School Response Coordination Center, Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC headquarters. You heard the Minister, you heard our correspondent also talk about this particular incident and the release of the students. I'd like you to speak to us, really. You know, because when this broke 2 weeks ago, you know, March 7th, actually, a lot of people wondered how, you know, it was possible to move that number of, you know, of children at a time without security response, without, you know, anybody speaking up, without, I mean, nothing was done, and they got into the bush, and then now they were rescued in Zamfara. Could you speak to us about this incident? You know, just so that we can understand what played out, and if possible, you know, not let it happen again.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so happy you also noticed it that nobody was actually saying anything. All over the world, securities operatives, they are not also witches and wizards. When we talk about this intelligence gathering and all that, they also rely on, you know, information by people, you know, in every corner. Now you begin to wonder if these children were actually in the pockets of the abductors from where they were kidnapped up to Zamfara. They were passing through villages, they were passing through all manner, but they are being monitored not by the locals, but by the security operatives that were monitoring them. Otherwise, rescue them wouldn't have been possible. But then, when it also happened, for 1-2 hours, nobody was actually knowing anything. Probably confusion, probably people didn't know what to do, or probably people are also afraid of, you know, what to say. We have been telling people, if you see something, say something. But probably many people are even saying now, when you say something, you will see something. When you get to, it's only in our own part of the world that you cannot really get anything from anybody. If at the ordinary scene of a bike accident, you're asking questions, everybody will be telling you that they are just coming, including the rider. It's unfortunate that we don't have that security culture. If you ask me why is it possible, it is because we don't really have security culture. We don't monitor anything. We don't give information. Why it shouldn't happen again? The Honorable Minister also said it. You also asked that question. Don't you think it's necessary to be doing drills and all that in schools and community engagement? Not for it not to happen again. This is our focus now, particularly at the National Safe School and Response Coordination Center, going to schools, sensitizing them and all that, so that people will know. There won't be confusion. You get to schools today, apart from the fact that they don't have fences, they don't have also. You hardly will you see any school in Nigeria today that will designate an area to say this is a muster point. This is, if there is any problem, this is where we will meet and all that. We know it is not right, you know, to have to use a muster point in this case, because it's like you are also gathering them for those that will take them. But what we are saying is that it's not only that threat that is facing, I mean, that the schools are facing. There are so many other threats that when it happens, what do? We lack that skill, and until we begin to bring ourselves up to have that skill, we may be having these issues. So, if you ask me, it is this lack of security culture that is actually even hampering the security operatives from getting what they want to get. So they have to put extra effort before they could even have access to, you know, the least information about anything that is happening within the environment. That is not the way it is done elsewhere.
Okay, that's not the way it's done elsewhere. And you know, while we were talking off air before we began this program, we were thinking of the movement of a large number of students from one end from Kaduna to Zamfara. When you leave the Kaduna terrain, usually, Dr. Kabir Adamu, it's just land, open space, you know, going into Zamfara. And these students couldn't be traced. Would you say that is because the bandits now control this axis where silence, you know, is sort of golden? And on the conflicting figures, why did the security agencies have to wait until when the students were released for them to give us the right figures? Because all along, since when they were abducted, 200 and 200 plus, 200 plus. Where are we getting this figure now and saying that they were only 37 have been abducted? It's sort of confusing, keeping Nigerians in the dark, don't you think?
I think that's the word. There is a lot of confusion, which is really unfortunate. And I think the minister, in his concluding remarks, spoke to why we have the confusion. I remember very well, after the incident, some of the officials in the school, I think the principal and 1 or 2 teachers were the one who gave that figure. At that time, I think 278, if I remember well. It was on air. They spoke. It's not as if journalists manufactured it. And up until yesterday, when the governor countered that number, nobody before then countered the number. So, I mean, and that's not to say that anyone is wrong. All I think that is being revealed is that the structures and the platform that would allow even the teachers to determine the number of students they have was not available. And I think that's what the minister told us indirectly. I remember as a kid, I went to a public school, and so most of us probably here went to a public school. The moment you enter the class, the first thing the teacher does is do the register. Present, absent. Yes. Almost everybody who went to public school is aware of that, and then he would take note. So at the end of that exercise, roll call, I think they used to call it, yes, he would know how many pupils were in the class at that point in time. So it appears, unfortunately, I'm no longer in touch with public school like I used to be in the past. It appears that that practice is no longer existent from the statement by the minister. So something somewhere, somebody dropped the ball. I would have been really happy if the minister had answered the question about the national policy on safety, security, and violence-free school. It was a policy that was launched in 2021, and as an expert, I'm quite happy with the content of that document. And if we invited the world to launch such a document, then perhaps the only thing remaining for us to implement the content of that document. Everything about the Safe School Initiative was contained in that document. My understanding was that the Safe School Initiative was subsumed by that policy, and that the implementation will now see us having, as it were, safe schools. So with your question, in simple terms, I think there is a lot of confusion. Not because anyone wants to lie, but because perhaps the structure that will allow facts to be generated were not there. The teachers spoke because they believed. There was a clarification at one point in time that the number in the secondary school was about 100 and I think the 38 or 37. Then later they said it was the primary school that made up the figure to become 287. So that's what we know. And even now, I am taking a very, what's the word now? I'm being careful with any conclusions until the students are released to the parents. And now the parents now say all our kids are back. That's when I think all of us would know whether it was 138 or 287. Because as the parents are yet to actually see their kids. No parent who hasn't seen his kid will keep quiet. They will speak eventually. So at that point, I think we will know the truth.
I want to, you've not answered my question on the conspiracy of silence along those routes where the students are taken.
Intelligence is meant to be harvested, and I think this is where I differ with my brother in uniform. Intelligence is meant to be harvested. Yes, there is voluntary intelligence, but at that point it's actually information. It will become intelligence if it helps you in unraveling a particular case. Now, the harvesting of that intelligence is a function of several things. Number one function is trust between the citizens, residents of that location, and the government officials. If they trust you, they will volunteer information to you. If they don't trust you, then they are not likely to volunteer that information to you. The second platform, which is also important, is what platforms have you made available for the sharing of that information. You are from the Northeast, and you would recall at the beginning of the insurgency there, people lost their lives because they volunteered information. Have we changed that? Have we, the integrity of the sharing of that information, have we really provided platforms where, as a citizen, if I share information, my safety, my personal safety is guaranteed? I don't think we've worked on that yet. So even though, yes, I agree, the culture of security is very important, but the onus is on us, government, to make sure citizens volunteer that information in a manner that would not affect their safety. Now, if you look at that location from Chikun local government all the way to Zamfara, in fact, I think a few hours after that incident, I knew from my, as you know, I have a company that I run and I gather intelligence as a private individual. I knew that the bandit that actually committed that act came from Zamfara, and that's me as a private individual. And what I told myself is it would be very easy if you want to determine the route he would pass. Because two options, either he would take them to Brunungwari,
yes,
a forest, and keep them there, or take them all the way to Zamfara. And the easiest way to determine the route, and of course to also determine the choke points that you put, because one mistake that we keep on making, security is deployed in concentric cycles. When the Russian incident happened over the weekend, I think on Friday,
yes,
they were able to arrest the 4 suspects in hours, for the simple reason that they deployed security in concentric cycles and choked the access route. So if we had had that aerial view and had put and choked the outlet to a point where we're able to arrest the suspects, it would have been very easy. The hours immediately after the incident, if we had done that, believe me, this 16 days wouldn't have happened. So the point I'm trying to make is surveillance in this instance is very important, and it's not the role of NCDC to conduct that kind of surveillance. We have 29 ministries, departments, and agencies in security. If they had sat down, and those of them with responsibility for surveillance, with that kind of aerial view, it would have been very easy. The foliage that exists on that route is not much. Yes, there are forests, no doubt, but between Kuriga and the forested areas, a lot would have happened. That choke point that I was talking about would have allowed us to a lot would have been gotten out of that. And I must conclude by commending the efforts of especially stakeholders within the community that supported the security organizations. Like I said, there are 29 MDAs in security. One of the things that I had hoped would have happened immediately after the incident was to set up an emergency center that would have helped coordinate the efforts of these 29 MDAs, because each of them have a role to play, just like the minister pointed. Some of them is technical surveillance, others are physical surveillance, then others are the harvesting of direct intelligence. The role of the SSS is being underplayed. Even when the governor released his statement, I read it carefully and I noticed he did not mention the SSS. So again, these are things that in security, we have what we call the 3 Ds and the 3 Rs. Now we're in the stage for the 3 Rs. The incident has happened. Alhamdulillah, the kids have been released, rescued. We don't know what happened. But this is the time to do a review and say, what did we do well, what didn't we do well, so that it doesn't happen again.
All right, if I get you correctly, Dr. Kabir Adamu, from what you're saying that, our security operatives could actually do better, in situations like this, and jointly could actually do better. I'll come to you on that, so that, because this issue of kidnapping in schools and kidnapping large number of students at the time is becoming an issue that should be talked about, just so that we can have our students in school and have a future as a nation.
Let's put it on the ground. Let's bear it open. The police formation in Kuriga was closed down before the incident happened. This is a statement from the governor himself. He admitted to the fact that there was no police department in the town when the incident happened. Who has been held responsible for that? Nobody yet. The only security presence in that town when it happened were vigilantes. One of them lost his life. Nobody is paying any tribute to that person who ultimate sacrifice, as it were. What did he attempt to do to stop those people who were carrying AK-47? He had a Dane gun, a pump-action rifle, and an attempt to stop them. They shot him, they killed him. So these are things that I think we need to look at. When I referred to the national policy on safety, security, and violence-free school, it's very clear. It provided, and I'm sure Doctor will speak to what the content of that document, what it is meant to provide to ensure that the vulnerabilities, a school that does not have a perimeter fences, how do you expect to prevent that, what we saw? A school that was close to an area. There are 3 local governments in Kaduna that are endemic with banditry. Chikun is one of them. And yet we allowed a school to exist in Chikun. So when I talk of review and recovery, this is what we need to, as people. And when I speak here, I speak with all sense of responsibility. I'm a Nigerian. I love my country. If we don't do this, then we're not doing the right thing. We need to call a spade a spade. Some people dropped the ball and allowed this incident to happen. If we do not take corrective measures, sadly, this
would happen again. All right, let's go to Kaduna now. Mohammed Adli, you're a security expert, and I'm sure that you have been following the conversation right here in the studio, and of course you heard the minister when he spoke via Zoom. You are in Kaduna. You heard Dr. Kabir Adamu talk about the fact that Chikun, the way it is, and then the 3 local governments that are endemic to banditry. Could you speak to us first what the security situation is like in Kaduna, in these 3 local governments, and tell me, is it possible that the bandits are really, very well armed, that security operatives would not want to counter them at the point where these kidnappings are going on, and rather go after them much later in terms of rescue or release? Speak to us in that light.
The 3 local governments mentioned by Dr. Kabir include Chikun, Igabi local government, and Giwa local government. 2 local governments, Giwa and Igabi, are in Zone 2, while Chikun is also in Zone 2. So the 3 local governments that are prone to acts of banditry and the economy of violence are the 3 just mentioned. The security agencies domiciled in Kaduna are doing the very best they can to ensure that there is safety, security, and stability all over the state. But a lot needs to be done because they are suffering from lack of functional equipment, which includes mobility. Because time and again reports will be made about bandits encroaching towards certain settlements. But the police or the army will complain of lack of mobility, or there is the vehicle but it has no tire, or the vehicle has no battery. So something has to be done about that. Something must be done in order to ensure that security agencies are properly equipped and properly funded, so that they will be able to live up to the challenges of combating banditry and the economy of violence. Again, on the other hand, from the inception of this program, we've been talking about the number of the students kidnapped. It's like there is uncertainty as to the actual number. In all honesty, the number is 137, plus the late teacher, Abdullahi, may Allah have mercy on him, making 38 people. I want 38 people. But social media users who, from the beginning of the incidents, took to the social media cycle, they were reporting 287, trying to compare it with what has happened in Chibok in the year 2014. But the actual figure is 137, because these incidents happened at about 7:45 hours of the morning, when the school was conducting assembly. So students have not even gotten into their classes, because it is only when you get into the class that you will be able to do a roll call and know who is present and know who is absent. That was not done on the 7th, because they have not yet gotten into their classes. It was at the assembly ground that these hoodlums came and moved them out and into the bush. And in the process, quite a number were able to escape. And even while they were in the bush, 2 days while they were in captivity, 28 other students were able to find their way back home. So the number given by the defense spokesperson, General Edward, as 137 is correct. There is there is nothing added to that. It is 137 that were abducted, and it is 137 that were released. And the release of these students followed a very lengthy collaboration, negotiation, and discussions, including elders of the Kuriga community and other elders from adjoining communities in Zamfara state who came together to talk, and also reached out to certain bandit leaders within Zamfara axis who are able to talk to Yellow Jambros, who is the mastermind of the gang that kidnapped the Kuriga students. So he was spoken to, and after some long argument and demands, he finally gave in and accepted the conditions or the demand of the elders, including the security angels. And here again, a lot of kudos goes to the National Security Advisor and the Minister of Defense for their unflinching support and resilience to see that these students not only rescued, but they came out free and safely too. Although we have to pay tribute to their late teacher, Malang Abdullah Hisani, who lost his life in the process while they were still in captivity. So in a nutshell, this is what happened. So the number is 137, not 287, as is generally speculated all over the place.
Muhammad Ali, I'm still going to stay with you briefly before we join Umar Anjigi to ask him more questions. You know, we've talked about proliferation of small arms, you know, circulating across the country, and the minister also stated that kidnapping is like striking a knife in the heart of the nation. I don't want to sound too cliche when I say education is the foundation of any meaningful society. Now, these kidnappers come there, pick them, take them on the terrain, hide them. They demanded for 1 billion, including motorcycles and generators, I think. But what Nigerians are wondering is, were these students released or were they rescued? And did they drop their demand all of a sudden?
We should not mix up the kidnap of the Kuriga students and that of the 16 abducted persons in Gwanungora. It is the abductors of Gwanungora people that demanded for 1 trillion, 15 Hilux vehicle, and 150 motorcycles. The Kuriga abductors do not demand for Hilux, do not demand for motorcycles, but at the initial stage, when they were discussing with parents, they put up a demand of 1 billion naira. Which subsequently, I think, was watered down, because I was also privileged to speak with John Bros, who said they need something, and I offered to give them 50 bags of rice, which he said he turned down. And later, the elders in Kuriga community, coupled with other agencies in Zamfara state, were able to come together and discuss with some of their leaders in Zamfara state, who called him, appealed to him, and was really ready, and he became willing to submit to the popular demand as to why he should release those students peacefully. So if we say they are rescued, it means force was used. Force was not used, but the security agencies use certain technicalities in order to really get to the roots of the issue and safely receive the students as released by the abductors.
Thanks, Muhammad Ali.
I need to apologize for mixing the figures there, because so many kidnappings happened within the week, and everything just comes out confusing, and you tend to mix these demands by the kidnappers, which is sort of outrageous. And we also ask ourselves at times what gives them the audacity to do this kind of kidnaps and sometimes get away with it. Henry, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, of course. My question will wait. Let's take a break. Stay with us. The conversation continues. All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live in the network service of the NTA. And before we went on that break, we were talking about the release of the students in Kuriga local government area that were abducted on March 7th. We still have our guests very much with us, and I'm going to our correspondent Umar Jingi, who has been on the story since it broke on the day the students were kidnapped. Umar Jingi, I want to find out from you about the community, how Kuriga has been, you know, just give us a feel on the day the kidnap happened. What it was like, the past 2 weeks while the children were still in captivity, and then how did the community receive the news yesterday that the students have been released? That's on one hand. Then could you tell us the state of the school after the kidnap? The school resumed the following day. Have they been having academic activities in that school, this past 2 weeks? Do you think the school would be open this morning? Just give us a feel of all of this.
Well, when the incident happened, you remember the state governor and some journalists visited Kuriga village to sympathize with the families of the victims. The mood then was not quite pleasant. The people were crying. The parents were so worried. But then the governor assured them that the state government, in collaboration with the security agencies, the federal government, will do everything possible to ensure that these students were rescued immediately. That gives them sort of a confidence, and then give them hope that the state government and the security agencies will do all the needful to ensure their children are back home safely. And yesterday, when the news broke to them that the students were released, the Kuriga community was excited. The people were quite happy. We've met some of the parents, not in Kuriga anyway, but some of them who visited the governor at the government house to have some stakeholders meeting with him. We interviewed some of them later. You can see how happy they are. We interviewed a parent who told us that he was having sleepless night for more than 2 weeks now. His daughter was among the victims, but yesterday he feels some sigh of relief that God has answered his prayers, and the effort of the security agency, the president, the state governor has yielded a very good result, and that God will reward them abundantly, particularly in this very important month of Ramadan. Well, concerning the school, there were 2 schools in Kuriga, a primary school and a junior secondary school. The junior secondary school is at the outskirts of Kuriga village, very prone to this issue of insecurity, because Kuriga is a community very close to Binongwari. Binongwari in Kaduna State and Kajuru are one of the 2 local government areas that are worst hit by this issue of insecurity and incessant abduction of people for quite a while now. So knowing that fact, the school management decided to join the students together in a more safer place, which is a primary school that is very close to the town then. But even still at that, this unfortunate incident happened. So the parents are very, very excited. We're going to meet them later during the day at government house, hopefully, for them to receive their children. I will interview them and we'll keep you updated. We are much on ground. I am very sure you see how happy these parents are at the moment. Not even the parents, the people of Kaduna State, of course, Nigerians and other stakeholders are excited with this great success by the security agencies and by the Nigerian government in general.
Umar Andigi will be waiting for update from you from the government house. But what kind of feelings are you getting from the government house now? What time do you think these children will be back and be with their parents? And what is their psychological and mental condition? Do you have any reports on that?
Well, I don't have any report on that at the moment, but what we know is that the children are currently at a medical facility here in Kaduna, receiving medical attention and some counseling because of their condition, their experiences, and the trauma they've undergone. They spent more than 2 weeks in the hands of their abductors. Juma, you can imagine the kind of trauma, how devastated these children are at the moment. And that is why I think the state government decided to take this bold decision of not allowing them to be in the public, but to undergo some thorough medical checkups and counseling before they will unveil them to the public. So hopefully later during the day, we'll go back to the government house and see whether they are deemed fit to be in the public and for them to be reunited with their parents. As I said earlier, we are much on ground. We will keep you updated on issues as they unfold.
Thanks, Umar. Ajingi would definitely stay with you on that matter. Let's come back to the studio now. Dr. Kabir Adamu, when you spoke earlier, you were talking about, steps that, the security agencies, 29 MDAs, could actually take to ensure that, things like this are nipped in the bud. And, when you spoke, it just got me thinking that once you are able to deal with an issue like this once or twice, it will send a strong signal to the kidnappers themselves, to stay away. Well, what would be your, your recommendation now, first to security operators in the country, about how to deal with situations like this? Because it's becoming, it's something that you don't want to think about. And I'm particularly worried because we're talking about school children here. We'll have a huge number out of school children already. I tried to ask Umar Jingi about the state of the school. I'm not sure school would have resumed after that day. That's like 2 weeks gone. And the school may never even come back until maybe next term or, whenever something drastic is done about security in that community. It's increasing the number of out-of-school children. It is a difficult problem that needs to be solved. What do you think? How do you think security agencies should respond in situations like this?
Thank you, but I would also want to perhaps say it's not just the responsibility of security agencies. It is all stakeholders' affair. Education is too important to be left to any part of society. We as a people should decide. When we signed up on the Safe School Declaration, I can't remember the exact year, I think it was 2019. When we signed up on that declaration, the idea is that we will make our school environment safe for every student. So as an example, Ajuma knows this, in the Northeast, you will go to some schools and you will find military personnel occupying those schools. So under Safe School Declaration, the idea was that no school at no cost would ever be occupied by any military. They will vacate so that environment. Point I'm trying to make is that it is not just the responsibility of security agencies. It is our responsibility as a people. Education is just too important to allow it to any segment of society. Now, having said that, those who conceived of our constitution realized that, and that's why they did not put education in the exclusive list. They made it in the concurrent list, which means all tiers of government have a role to play. So when the minister, for example, said not all stakeholders have signed up to the Safe School initiative, he was very clear in that regard. All levels of government need to come to an agreement that this is the minimum level of standard for security that we should have in our schools. Now for the security agencies, their role is very clear in the national policy on safety, security, and violence-free schools. Earlier when I spoke about the 3 Ds and the 3 Rs of security, protection is very important. Now, there are first levels of protection. As an example, when you put a perimeter fence, it's a protection. Nobody can just walk into the school. You provide a fence, you provide a gate, and except if the person comes with maybe a hammer or some other equipment that will allow him to chisel through that wall, like we saw in the earlier report that you showed. But then one of the R's in that security conduit that I spoke about is response. That period it would take that person to drill into the fence. People like a doctor will respond and they will stop him from entering into that fence. So I think all the security agencies, what I am seeing that makes me a little bit uncomfortable is every day when I read the news, I see one or the other of these 29 MDAs creating a unit for school security. I don't think that is the intention behind the national policy. The intention is that they should work together to support the protection of schools. If the police creates its own unit, squad, to save schools. Civil defense does the same thing. Army, or name them, the military, armed forces of Nigeria does the same thing. At what point are they going to work together when there are not enough personnel? So I think this is where perhaps the Ministry of Education needs to come in to ask critical questions. Why are we seeing a proliferation of units within the security sector for the protection of schools when what we need is a coordinated effort? Let's know the number of personnel that have been dedicated to this particular function of saving schools, so that once we know the personnel, we can now know how to deploy them across the schools. And because I based on what I know, the entire security personnel we have in the country are at about 1 million at the moment. Now, out of that 1 million, if we dedicate 5%, just 5% to the protection of schools, there won't be enough, given the number of schools that we have within the country. So what do we need in this context? Force multipliers. Mohammed Ali spoke about that earlier on. Vehicles, as an example. If you have, let's say, a team, light force deployed in, let's divide Kaduna into 3 zones. Just like, it has, deploy that light force in a particular location, give them the equipment they need, and then of course tie that deployment to the early warning systems that Kaduna has, so that anytime there is an incident in a school, all that school needs to do is to call that particular unit, and then the unit will deploy, light force deployment, so that at least within 10 to 15 minutes, or even shorter than that, you'll be able to deploy to that location. Because let's be realistic, we don't have enough personnel to do that. So in that regard, I think we need to come up with a coordinated effort, just like it's contained in the national policy on safety, security, and violence-free school. I've read that policy. I'm very happy with it. If we can implement it, I think we would be saying bye-bye to this challenge.
Indeed, we have about 1 million security agencies defend, and at least like 100% of them are with private individuals. If we can bring them back to the fold, I believe that security will be more effective. And like you said, protection is very important. Efforts must be coordinated. I'll now bring in Dr. Hamid Abodri, the Commander, National Safe Schools Response Coordination Center. We hear that there are plans on the way to, train newly recruited personnel of the NSCDC Corps in 36 states and the FCT as part of the School Safety Protection Squad. Can you tell us about it, and what would be what would they be doing to ensure that our schools are safe? Because as we all see, is as if there is a systematic, plot to bring down education in the country.
Well, thank you very much. But let me quickly make this clarification about what the doctor said concerning agencies trying to bring up safe school programs in their individual agencies. There's a national plan for safe school financing and all that. In that plan, every agency has its own role to play. We have a national center where we have representatives of other agencies in that national center, the police, the DIA, everybody in that national center, including somebody from the Ministry of Education. Now, the short-term implementation of that plan is to create awareness. I think it is that stage. We did that sometimes last year in civil defense. I think the police eventually also came up, and the military is just coming up to emphasize their own role in that coordination center. That if this one happens, this one belongs to you. If this one happens, so they have to sensitize their own personnel too. That look, there's this government, federal government project that when it happens, this is what is expected of you to do. I think that's why you are seeing, agencies, coming up to sensitize, essentially to sensitize their personnel. That's what they are doing now. For instance, the police is saying that, look, this is what you do when it happens and all that. And we are also having centers in states where we are just like you said, education on concurrent list. We expect state governors to private centers. About 3 or 4 of them have responded so far to have their centers where every agencies and stakeholders will be coordinated in that center. So when you have it at the state level, then you get it at national level. Now, the special protection squad that civil defense is trying to, is establishing, they already have a squad at the national center. Then the civil defense also has, they have the female squad team, because initially civil defense set up female squads to be going to schools. And the reason is...
Why female?
Yeah. The reason is that these are children. The Commandant General felt that they will have, you know, that quality of a mother, you know, the way you attend to the way mothers attend to children will be different. At the same time, they are also trained to be tough in case there are issues, you know, that they need to respond to. And if they need backup, they will also call for backup. So that is why the female. If you also look at it generally, the security sector reform is talking about more involvement of female personnel, you know, in our security issues. It's not the time that you just use, you know, stronger to, you know, attend to security issues. It is a school thing, and these children still need somebody to look up to, as somebody who cares for them. And naturally, children are always at home with mother than with the fathers. And that is the idea behind that female squad. So this squad that is coming up is also to work with this female squad thing, be at the background. If there is any issue that is going to, is beyond, you know, what they can confront, then they now come for backup. Of course, the police is on ground too, and the military will also be on ground. That is what the coordination is, you know, talking about. Essentially, that is what they are going to be doing. Then, besides that, I'm happy. Doctor also talk about this idea of don't have uniform in schools. It is the global best practices. For instance, many children, when they also see gun, they get confused, even adults. So they don't want people to go into schools with their uniform, with their weapons and all that, in order not to cause confusion for learners. And that is one. Secondly, where you see operatives, like the bandits, there was even this report that they killed a vigilante. Now you could imagine what would have happened if they saw, if it were to be a detachment of either military, police or civil defense, there would have been a kind of, you know, cross-firing. In that process, children, teachers, members of school community will be affected. That is why they are saying, don't go near school. Because in the process of you becoming target of bandits or insurgents or whatever, these innocent kids and their teachers and other members of school community will be victims. That is why we say, okay, don't go near schools. What we will do eventually is just to maintain a constant patrol where people can come. But like I said earlier, we need to have this culture of security. The minister just talked about registration of schools. Now we have been on this registration of schools for the past 6 months. You discover that people don't want to even register their schools. And that would have helped too, because when you register your school on our own platform, we have that platform that can just give the address, the coordinate of your school will be generated automatically on that platform. You know?
All right, thank you, Dr. Abodiri. We're about to wrap up the conversation, but we'll just quickly give 30 seconds to Muhammad Ali to give us his recommendation, just so we can prevent a reoccurrence.
Other occurrence, we need to set up, and state governments, particularly Ministry of Education, to get in touch with public safety professionals. Because of the paucity of number of our security personnel, they cannot be everywhere. So we need public safety professionals to come on board in order to improve the security around our schools. And we also need to engage people that will look at the criticality and vulnerability of some of our schools, educational institutions, with a view to standardizing the security around such schools in order to improve on security, stability, and also safety of both teachers and students.
Very much, Muhammad Ali, of course, security expert. Thank you for your insight on the program today. And of course, we appreciate our correspondent, Umar Jingi, who joined us too for the conversation. Right here in the studio, we appreciate Dr. Hamid Abodiri, Commandant National Safe School Response Coordination Center, Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC headquarters. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Kabir Adamu, thank you so much. I think I want to, learn under you so I can be a security expert myself. It's very important to this country at the moment.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Thank you so much for always sharing your depth of knowledge with us as regards security matters.
Yes,
we appreciate you.
And we also had Professor Tahir Mamman, SAN, Honorable Minister of Education, and that's how it's been on Good Morning Nigeria today. See you tomorrow for another edition of the program. I am Jumma Yeso.
And I'm Yan Ray John. Have a great week. Remain tuned to the NTA.